Now let's go back to use the OPC Systems HMI container. And with the OPC Systems HMI container, we'll see how to use the history feature. There's a history button on the toolbar. We can select that and specify the start and end date and time that we want to pull history from. When we select OK, the service automatically retrieves from the database all alarms that we have logged to that database. Note that you can't acknowledge these alarms because they are statically in the database. To return back to runtime, click on the green button. Now let's return back to the Configure application. Let's see how to send an email notification when an alarm occurs. To do this, we select Configure, Alarm Notification, select the local service or the remote service that you want to configure, enter a notification group name. I'm going to use Test. You can enable notification, but notice you can also enable or disable notification based upon an OPC Systems.NET tag. This you could do with a calculation from one of our data sources of like total seconds in the day and enable or disable certain users at particular times of day. Under the Filter tab is where we specify what types of alarms we will include in the notification. Right now we're only including active alarms, but we can also include alarms that have been acknowledged or alarms that have cleared as well. Under the Nodes tab is where we specify the data service that will be hosting these alarms. Under the Email tab is where we specify who we will be sending these alarms to. We need a from address, also a to address. If you have multiple email addresses you want to send to, separate them with a semicolon. You would specify the outgoing mail server, and if the outgoing mail server requires authentication, you can enable user credentials and enter in your username and password for that sending account. With the email, we can specify what subject we want to include, and then what information we want to include in the email. By default, we will be sending the alarm text along with alarm group and these other properties that are checked. There's another great feature of the alarm notification under the Tags tab. Using this, we can specify to write to OPC Systems.NET tags, and if the tags that we're writing to are defined as OPC items, it will write it on down to the data source of an OPC server. And the first feature we're looking at here is to write to a tag anytime alarms are active that meet the filter criteria that we have specified under the Filter tab. This is a great way to drive an alarm horn when alarms are currently active that meet this criteria. We can also set a tag when alarms are active and not acknowledged. This way we might want to turn a button red when we have this tag active, and then also in like OPC controls or OPC web controls we could turn a button yellow when alarms are active and acknowledged, but yet not active and not acknowledged. We can also write to an integer tag how many alarms are currently active in the system. We can also write how many alarms that are active and not acknowledged. We can also write to a tag the number of alarms that have occurred over a given period. As an example, if you had a pump that was going in and out of alarm several times in a day, you could then write this value to an OPC Systems.NET tag, and then that tag could have its own high alarm limit that if it exceeded 5, to then send an email notification and post to the alarm window that we've had an excessive number of alarms in a given period. At the bottom we also have a feature to write to an OPC Systems.NET tag the number of alarms that have been active longer than a specified amount of time. This way we can notify a supervisor that an alarm has been active for a specified amount of time and has yet not cleared. With the alarm notification, it also has a CSV import and export feature, just like the tags and the alarm logging. So this way you can use Microsoft Excel to set up multiple alarm notification groups. Let's see how we might write one of these values back from a notification group back to an OPC systems.net tag. First, we need a tag where the value will be written to. So go back to Configure Tags and let's add a tag there. Let's give the tag name Number of Alarms Active. We'll click OK. Now select the Number of Alarms Active tag in the tag list, and we can then specify under the Value tab if we want to write this on down to an OPC item. Let's select the Browse button to browse for a local OPC server. I'm going to browse the simulator OPC server and write this out to an out tag. We click Apply Changes. We see the current value of that OPC item. Now if we go back to the alarm notification, we will go down to the property that says Set Integer Tag with Alarm Active Count. The Browse button will then appear. We can then browse for that OPC systems.net tag. You notice we can also browse for direct OPC connections to write values directly to OPC servers without creating an OPC systems.net tag. I like the OPC systems.net tag though, because we can generate additional alarms based upon the value in the value field. We're going to browse for the value property of the number of alarms active. We'll click OK. And now we'll add that alarm notification group to the service. If we now go back to Configure Tags and select the number of alarms active, we see that the value is changing. Currently I have between 3 to 4 alarms that are currently active. To configure security for the OPC system service, select Configure Security. We're going to select the local service to configure, and the default security group is how the system works without any user logged in from any client. Let's add a new group, and we'll call the new group Allow. Click the Add button at the lower left. Now we have two security groups. One is the default and one is Allow. Under the default, we will uncheck Enable All Features. Under the alarm acknowledgement, we can specify to disable all alarms from being acknowledged, and optionally specify a priority range for alarms to be restricted on acknowledgement. We can then apply those changes to the default security group. Under the Allow group, we have not restricted anyone, so anyone that now logs in with the security group definition of Allow will be able to acknowledge those alarms. Also under the default group, we can restrict what real-time alarms we want to make visible. Let's change that to a priority range from 0 to 500. So in the alarm window, without logging in, we will only see alarms with a range of priority between 0 to 500. Let's apply those changes. Also with the alarm history, we also have a restriction there to only bring back history of alarms that meet this criteria. We also implemented alarm logging earlier. We can restrict configuration and also configuration for alarm notification based upon user login. Now we're ready to add a user using Configure Users. We'll select the local service. We'll enter in a username and a password, and then select the security group Allow, and add that user to the configuration. We would then want to save the security configuration either under Configure Users or under Configure Security to a file to then be loaded under Configure Options when the service restarts. We're now ready to see how that restriction affects the alarm window. So let's go back to the OPC Systems HMI. we should only see alarms with a priority range from 0 to 500. And we see that here in the right column. If we double click on an alarm, we see that the alarm does not acknowledge. In fact, we can try to acknowledge all alarms, and no alarm will be acknowledged. In order to log in, we can use the login from the toolbar, or from the OPC Systems HMI application, we can use the login at the top. We'll log in with our username and password. Click OK. In the real-time alarm window, we now see all alarms visible, not just a range from 0 to 500. And when we double-click on the alarm, we are able to acknowledge them. That is how security is implemented for the alarm management. To implement security in your Visual Studio application for an alarm control, you have a couple options. You can use the Login button on the toolbar of the alarm control, or you can call a method on the alarm window. Let's add a button to the form. And we can programmatically call methods on the OPC alarm control. If you've chosen the default name, it should be OPC Alarm Control 1. Then we have a login method that we can use to then specify a username and a password. And then the alarm window will be logged in with that user. That is also demonstrated in the VB.NET example. There is source code for the VB.NET example under the program group opcsystems.net. There you have the example code itself. Let's run the example application. We'll see it also has an alarm window that you can use. If you select Menu Alarms, there it's currently subscribed to the local service. But if you select the network node selection, you can actually redirect the connection from the example application to that remote service in Texas. This is an effective demonstration. If we launch two instances of the example application, both connected to that internet system in Texas, you can then acknowledge alarms on one system, and you will see the feedback on the other system. And that is going completely down through the internet to the system in Texas and then feeding back. So if we acknowledge all of those alarms, you can see the feedback, even across the internet, is quite good. And you're seeing the caching effect that we are just first subscribed to that system in Texas, and even across the internet we haven't lost any of the alarms. Back to the Visual Studio application, there are other methods that you can call on the OPC alarm control. And these are just for programmers that want to acknowledge alarms themselves based upon their own conditions. There's the ability to acknowledge all alarms, or you could acknowledge alarms by priority, specific network node, alarm ID, or by groups. You can also see you can programmatically change any property of the alarm control yourself. Another method that's quite useful on the alarm control is history select. In this way you can programmatically call history to retrieve alarms from a database programmatically. With the history select method, you pass a start date and an end date. If you have any questions about the OPCalarm.net product or any of the OPCsystems.net products, visit opcsystems.com and visit the sales page to find your local distributor.